All right, look, so is he or is he not Dan Campbell? He's got a play sheet. He's got certainly got the calls on the sideline. Is he taking the play calling here from Mr. Morton?
All indications are that he is now the offensive play caller of the Detroit Lions. He said in the interview with the sideline reporter there after halftime that we're just mixing some things up. So can you say for certain that Dan Campbell is calling 100% of the plays? No, you cannot. But it is very clear that he was calling a large majority, at the very least, of offensive plays, having the play sheet in his hand, with the glasses on. We haven't seen Dan Campbell with glasses on the sideline, so he's clearly looking and doing things. And look, it worked. Now, he chose this game against the Commanders' defense, one that had 0 sacks. Now, some of that could be play caller and not putting Jared Goff in a position to get sacked. 33 dropbacks and 0 sacks, always going to be impressive. But Dan Campbell did this about 4 or 5 years ago with his first offensive coordinator with the Detroit Lions. He did it with Anthony Lynn. Right around this time during that season, he took play calling from him. Now he's doing it with first-time play caller Johnny Morton, who, of course, took over for Ben Johnson. Will we see that through the end of the year? Was this a one-time thing, or is there going to be some sort of balance moving forward?
Melvin, do you like that? Do you like the head coach stepping in and saying, you know what, I'm gonna call some plays here? Because you know with Dan Campbell, he's going to go for it on 4th down a lot anyway, so he's making the final call most of the time.
I like the decision to do it, you know, and if you kind of watch him, you know what type of coach he is. And he likes to run the ball. He likes a game that's won by the trenches, and you've seen that today. Jahmyr Gibbs with 15, 142. David Montgomery, 15 for 71. I mean, it's not as spicy as Jahmyr Gibbs, but in a sense, you run the ball 30 times, that shows you controlling the clock. So I know he had a lot to do with that.
Is that what's necessary, B-Mac, when you're coming off a loss? Say, you know what, I'm going to spice things up. I need to send a message here. We need to spark our offense.
Well, the first thing that's necessary is a favorable opponent.
Sure.
Coming off a loss in the Commanders, especially with them playing with their backup quarterback and how bad their defense has been. But that's the thing. I understand what we did not see last week against the Minnesota Vikings. But before that loss against Minnesota, I felt like Johnny Morton did a really good job in play calling. You remember the first game, which was against Green Bay, you took an L. And then after that, it felt like Johnny Morton found his niche in terms of play calling with the personnel. So I don't know exactly, was this something internally that led to the change potentially, or was it solely about the lack of production last week against Minnesota? So my question would be, for you as an insider and for you as a former player, when you make this move, regardless if you called 70% of the plays tonight or 100%, can you go back to Johnny Morton? That's the thing. Because if you make this move, it's almost like making a change at the quarterback position.
Yeah.
Right? Do you go back to the former guy?
I mean, I think you can, because you're the head coach and you have the goodwill and the capital that Dan Campbell has, right? He has that locker room. There's no one who doubts decisions that he makes. And so because of that, because he has that capital, I think he could go back to Johnny Morton. And in fact, I would say if Dan Campbell were to do that at some point, right, in your hypothetical, I think everyone would be behind it, because everyone is behind Dan Campbell and the decisions that he makes, right? And I also don't believe that for one moment, because going into this game, going into this week, the Detroit Lions were second in the NFL in points scored. And so if he decides later on, no, I want it back, everybody's going to be like, well, yeah, he knows what he's talking about. So I think because he has that built-in goodwill there, I don't think there's any doubt about that.
Yeah, I mean, like you said, he's the head coach. So you can do what you want at the end of the day. It's your you know what I'm saying, decision to do that, however you want to do it. I think what people don't know, or maybe they should, or maybe they do, that each and every coach kind of got their head in the game plan, like they're all part of the game plan. You know, so they all kind of structurally know what's going on. So everyone should kind of be thinking alike on that side of the ball. So, I mean, if he gives it to him, I think, you know, starting with the Commander game, that probably was the game to do it. But just giving the players confidence, like, hey, if I want to do this, I can, or just kind of let the coach take back over. So
isn't that like any good manager, though, that knows how to win or knows how to succeed, not only in sports, but in life, in business practice? Like, look, I've done this before. Yeah. I know what I'm doing. You can follow my lead. If I'm wrong, then you can check me on it. But I'm going to show you a path so that you can be successful. That's what any good manager does and any good head coach does.
There's no doubt. And again, Dan Campbell does have experience doing this. It turned out really well for him and the Detroit Lions when he did take over play calling and what they did after the fact. And so, look, we're still very far away from talking about, do the Lions have to fire Johnny Morton at the end of the season? Are they going to get a new offensive coordinator in? Something clearly needed to be changed up. Dan Campbell decided that this was the week it was going to happen. Favorable opponent or not, sure, whatever. And then what they did was they go out and they score 44 points against a Washington Commanders team that is fighting for its playoff life.
Well, and they run that offense through Jared Goff, tied for the most career games, 9, with 300 passing yards, 3 passing touchdowns, no interceptions, tied with Matthew Stafford for most in Lions history. Jared Goff, not quietly, but leading this team to back where they should have been last season.
Yeah, and the thing I love about Jared Goff is he is the ultimate point guard for their offense. His ability to distribute the football in a high clip, very, very efficient. And whenever he has a clean pocket to work from within, he could do damage because he has the personnel. And the most important thing that I saw in terms of the encouragement that I saw from this game, getting Jamison Williams involved.
Yeah.
That's the thing. This offense turn in terms of the passing game was solely about Amon-Ra St. Brown, and we saw Laporta show up big time last week. But when you have a guy like J-Mo with the speed and the quickness that he has that really separate in the back end, now you're really doing big time things and you can be high level. And that's what they did. They featured J-Mo. He made big time plays. So now when you got all 3 of those guys that I mentioned in the passing game connecting with Jared Goff, I mean, we all know how entertaining this offense could be.
It's an incredible offense. And look, the road continues to get more difficult for Detroit. Next Sunday night, they've got Philadelphia. So, I mean, that's where, Melvin, that's where you're going to match. That's where you're going to look and you go, okay, here's where we stack up against the reigning Super Bowl champions. Because, look, we were thinking maybe that would be the NFC Championship last season. Yeah. It turned out it wasn't because they lost to the Commanders in the divisional round.
So maybe that game was a little, maybe they was a little upset about that game from what they did last year. But, I mean, I feel like the game of football is won in the trenches. Everyone knows how good Philly is. Everyone knows how good Detroit is and how, I mean, the run they made last year. You know, I'm a running back, so I feel like whoever controls the ground game wins the game.
And then when you look at the competitive nature in terms of their neighborhood that they're living in, the NFC North, you have no room for error.
No.
I mean, when you look at the teams they're chasing, winning today was huge for Detroit because we saw Chicago. They won, so they had the same identical record. And then, of course, the number 1 team in the black and blue division is the Green Bay Packers, who will kick off against the Philadelphia Eagles later this week in terms of Monday Night Football. So for Detroit, I mean, every game really matters right now because of how tough your division is.
Going on the road to Philadelphia next week, perhaps they can put back-to-back wins together. This one, they come back and win a game. Their 13th straight following a loss. 53 straight games without back-to-back losses dating back to 2022. And as we mentioned, a massive game in Week 11 on the road against the Philadelphia Eagles.